Okay, so tonight we find ourselves now as we journey through the Bible. We've gone through Genesis, Exodus, and Leviticus. We finished that last week. Tonight we're starting in the book of Numbers. Now, I don't know how many of you have read through the book of Numbers recently. Regardless whether you have or not, I would highly encourage you to survey that again. And the reason I say that is because it's easy in the book of Numbers to get bogged down, especially in about the first 10 chapters. Because in the first 10 chapters, there are a lot of, you guessed it, numbers. But, you know, if you can get through basically those first 10 chapters of Numbers, you have action, adventure stories, you have humor, you have stories of rebellions, you have talking donkeys, which we'll get to tonight. This is a lot more than what we give it sometimes credit for. Numbers is a fantastic, fantastic biblical book. And so we're going to look at it tonight. In fact, we're going to do two things in surveying the book of Numbers. We're going to look at it, first of all, from about that 35,000 feet level. We'll look at the highlights of it. We'll survey it. And then we're going to look at two specific passages in the book that are basically foundational to the book of Numbers and to the themes of Numbers. These two chapters, or these two stories, multiple chapters, sum up a lot of the themes that we see in the book of Numbers. So those are the two things that we're going to do tonight. We'll look at an overview of it and look at two stories in particular. Now, as we get then to the book of Numbers, let me throw out a theological idea to preface everything that we're going to study tonight. And this idea is foundational to the book of Numbers. Here it is. The ultimate question in life is not where we've been, it is where we're going. Let me say that again because this is foundational to the book. The ultimate question, or we could even say the ultimate test of life, is not found in where we've been. It is found in where we are going. You might say, well, Pastor, why do you say that, and what is the connection to Numbers? Well, hang with me. See, I know a lot of folks, and I've been like this myself at times, and you probably have too, who are very interested in not so much where we're going as in where we've been. And sometimes we think, well, if I can get back to where I've been, back there somewhere, wherever there is. That could have been yesterday, could be 25 years ago. If I can get back to that point in my life, then everything's going to be okay. Have you ever thought that? I know I have. But the ultimate question in life is not about getting back there somewhere. It's a question of where we're going. Let me say it like this. Look at the most vital choices that you're making today, or the most vital decisions that you have to make. Are those concerns and are those decisions based on an interest for the things of Christ or on self-interest? In other words, am I worshiping God with this decision? Am I moving forward? Or is the decision that I'm struggling with, or the things that I'm working through in my life, just things to make me happy or to get me back somewhere to a place that I've elevated in the past? Let me give you a quick example and then we'll get into the overview, because this connects with the book of Numbers, and I'll make that connection in just a moment. I received an email this past week from Carlos Valenzuela down in Peru. He was telling me about a church that he was ministering to up in the mountains. It was a mountain church way up. And he sent me some pictures back. He had preached in this church, and he took some pictures, and he said they had a big fellowship and had a meal of chicken and rice. It was really good. And he was telling me about this and sending me these pictures. And in the pictures, let me just tell you, this church building was probably about half the size of this room. Dirt floor. They had pews in this church, but they were all made out of real rough wood. I mean, some of us, we'd walk in there and go, man alive, this is the most uncomfortable thing I've ever seen. I'd rather sit on the floor, right? Pulpit. Carlos said, make sure you look at the pulpit. And make sure you look at the flower arrangement at the pulpit. The flower arrangement is not one we'd think about. Not what we'd have in our mind. The flower arrangement was a flower taped with masking tape to the front of the lectern. That was the flower arrangement. The fellowship hall and kitchen had a roof, but no outside walls. And animals walking around and all that. And I thought, well, I don't know if I would be real comfortable in that sort of context. And the Holy Spirit began to talk to me, Yvonne, and said, why would that make you uncomfortable? I didn't want to answer him. But I had to. I said, well, God, I'm uncomfortable because of my self-interest, my comfortability. And then I had to ask for forgiveness for that. And thinking that I was somehow better than these folks who had nothing but were worshiping God in spirit and truth. Perhaps even more effectively than I am. Had to admit that. Here's the connection. That gets us into the book of Numbers. Because we now come to a point where these folks, the Hebrews, are about to set out from Sinai, but the question before them is, do we want to stay comfortable or go back, or do we want to move forward? And God, we're not comfortable moving forward. That's the book of Numbers. In fact, and this gets to the first highlight on our outline for tonight, but one of the reasons why we see so many numbers in the first 10 chapters of the book of Numbers, in my mind, as I read the book in context, has to do with that very point. Because it highlights a census that was taken there at Sinai. And they'll take one again by the end of the book. And this census is about basically the number of people that were in the camp and were setting out for the Promised Land. Specifically, the number of soldiers that they could have. And scholars argue ad nauseum about that final figure. They say this could have been anywhere from 600,000 to 3 million people. We don't know for sure. It just depends on how you read the Hebrew and do the math. We won't go there today. But what's very important at the bottom of all these numbers is the fact that these people are to be headed somewhere. Not to be just staying somewhere stagnant or to be heading back to Egypt. What will their choice be? So as we get into the book of Numbers, that's really the first highlight for us to see. That's what the numbers are for. Where are these people going? Are they going to go? Or are they going to stay or fall out or go back? Second highlight of the book is this. Starting in chapter 10, about midway through chapter 10, and going all the way through chapter 21, we see Moses leading the people to a place called Moab. Now, Moab is, in this time, basically south and mostly east of what we would call the south end of the Dead Sea. It's right at the cusp of the Promised Land. But during this journey, in these chapters, some things begin to happen that challenge these people to the core about where they're going or if they're going to keep moving forward with God. For instance, in chapters 11 and 12, the people start to complain again. Guess what they complain about again? We don't have anything to eat. This time, however, God even goes above and beyond manna. Do you remember what manna is? Whatever it is. I mean, that's the actual translation of the word manna. It's a whatever it is. It's a what thing. What is this? I don't know. It's a what is it? God goes above and beyond that, and He gives them quail to eat. Provides. When you're moving forward, God is going to provide. But then, chapters 13 and 14, we get to the first of one of these landmark foundational stories that pretty much sum up the entire book. Now, let's read this story with a little more detail than just an overview. Let's go to chapter 13. Now, by chapter 13, the people, the Hebrews, had gotten to a place called Kadesh Barnea. We really don't know where that was exactly, at least I don't, and on my study of it. Most of the people I read said that it was somewhere between about 75 and 100 miles from the Promised Land. So I began to think of that in San Angelo terms. That's about the distance from here to Abilene. Not far. Even for them, this would be about a 3 to 5 day walk. Okay, but something happens. Okay, chapter 13. Let's just kind of roll through this and stop and go as we can. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Send out for yourself men, so that they may spy out the land of Canaan, which I am going to give the sons of Israel. You shall send a man from each of their fathers' tribes, everyone a leader among them." So God says, choose 12 guys, each representing one of the tribes of Israel. Okay. Verse 3, so Moses sent them from the wilderness of Paran at the command of the Lord, all of them men who were heads of the sons of Israel. Now, skip down a little bit because we get all of their names and their lineage. Okay, let's go down to verse 17. So they assembled the 12. When Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, he said to them, "Go up there, go north, into the Negev." That was kind of a wilderness area south of what we would call Jerusalem or Judah, that region. Go into the Negev, then go up into the hill country. So keep moving north and see what the land is like and whether the people who live in it are strong or weak, whether they are few or many. And how is the land in which they live? Is it good or bad? How are the cities in which they live? Are they like open camps or with fortifications? And how is the land? Is it fat or lean? Are there trees in it or not? Is there water, basically? Make an effort to get some of the fruit of the land. Now, this was the time of the first ripe grapes. So they went up and spied out the land from the wilderness of Zin as far as Rehob at Lebo Hamath. Now, I looked at this on a map this week. This place called Rehob or Rehob was about up where the Sea of Galilee was or is. So they really took a trip. I mean, these guys were really doing their job well. Okay, so let's go to verse 22. When they had gone up into the Negev, they came to Hebron, where these guys, I can't pronounce their names, the descendants of Anak were. Now, Hebron was built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. Then they came to the valley of Eshcol, and from there cut down a branch with single cluster of grapes, and they carried it on a pole between two men with some of the pomegranates and figs. That place was called the Valley of Eshcol because of the cluster which the sons of Israel cut down from there. Okay, so good trip, all right? Verse 25. When they returned from spying out the land, at the end of 40 days, they proceeded to come to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation of the sons of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. And there they brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. Now, where do you think this is going? This is supposed to be good, right? Good trip, good fruit. This is going to be a good report. Verse 27. Thus they told him and said, we went into the land where you sent us, and it certainly does flow with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. Yay! Verse 28. Nevertheless, the people who live in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. And moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there, big, strong people. Amalek is living in the land of the Negev, and the Hittites, and the Jebusites, and the Amorites living in the hill country, and the Canaanites are living by the sea on the side of the Jordan. So this gets everybody stirred up. Verse 30, Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, we should by all means go up and take possession of it, for we shall surely overcome it. But the men who had gone up with him said, we are not able to go up against the people. They are too strong for us. So they gave out to the sons of Israel a bad report of the land, which they had spied out, saying, the land through which we have gone in spying it out is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw in it are men of great size. They can beat us up. There also we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who are part of the Nephilim, big, strong people. And we became like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight. Then all the congregation, chapter 14, lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the sons of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron and the whole congregation and said to them, would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would that we had died in the wilderness. And why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become plunder. Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt? We want to go back. Verse 4, so they said to one another, let's appoint a leader and return to Egypt. Moses is out. Moses and Aaron fell on their faces in the presence of all the assembly of the congregation. And Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh and those who had spied out the land tore their clothes, mourning, grieving. And they spoke to all the congregations of the congregation of the sons of Israel, saying, the land which we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord is pleased with us, then He will bring us into this land and give it to us. A land which flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land. They shall be our prey. Their protection has been removed from them. The Lord is with us. Do not fear them. But all the congregation said to stone them with stones. Then the glory of the Lord appeared at the tent of meeting to all the sons of Israel. And you go through the rest of that, there's a conversation. God becomes very angry again. And then he says this. Come to down to verse 33. And your sons, this is God speaking, shall be shepherds for 40 years. In the wilderness. And they shall suffer for your unfaithfulness until your corpses lie in the wilderness. Ouch. According to the number of days which you spied out the land, 40 days. For every day you shall bear the guilt a year, even 40 years, and you shall know my opposition. Whoa. Okay. So what have we learned? These 12 spies are sent out, 40 days. They come back. They say the land is great. Here's the fruit. We got a whole branch of grapes. But 10 of them said what? Giants. And only 2 of them, Joshua and Caleb, said what? We can do it. Move forward. Don't go back. But what happened? They called a special business meeting. And what did they say? Yeah. Pastor, you're fired, and we're going back to Egypt. We don't want to have anything to do with this. Do you get the sense of what they're talking about, what they're implying here? If we go back to Egypt, at least we'll have something to eat. We'll be slaves, but at least that's better than dying. Now, is that the kind of attitude to have in life? Better to be a slave and eat from a meat pot than what we're doing now. So I guess I'll just do that. Not really the best outworking of faith. And as a result of all of this, what happened? Well, they have to wander around 40 years before entering the Promised Land. Can you imagine that? It taking you 40 years to get from here to Abilene? Just wandering around West Texas. What a nightmare. But God's plan will continue, will it not? And there's this mixture of grace and justice again. It's going to take you 40 years, but you'll get there. And let me mention something there because I'm quickly running out of time. There's something happening here in this story that is just intriguing to me. And it's something that I do at times, and I would assume that some of you do this as well. But sometimes we separate reality from faith. Let me explain that. The congregation here in the Hebrews heard this report, and there is a faith component, right? There's at least two of them that say, we can do this, let's move forward, let's be faithful. But this realism is creeping in, saying, that's not a good idea. The hard, cold reality is there are giants in the land. We don't know what we can do with this. Common sense is telling us to pull back and go back to Egypt. That's the reality. And don't we do the same today in our lives at times? This is just the reality of my life. This is how it's going to be. I can't really do anything about it. It is what it is. I just have to live like this. This is reality. So don't talk to me about faith. Let's talk about reality. Don't separate faith from reality. Mix them together. We're making a fatal error. A fatal error. If our reality is ever separated from our faith. Fatal. And by fatal, I mean spiritual demise. If our lives are dictated more by, well, this is just the hard, cold facts of life, more than our faith interacting with our reality, we need to do some business with God at that point. We really do. Augustine, have you ever heard of him? Or Augustine, as some people call him. One of the greatest theologians to ever live. Lived a long time ago. I just think is superb. I think about this almost every day. He said that life is much about faith-seeking understanding. And that'll just kind of blow your mind if you think about it a little bit, but essentially what he's getting at is this. As Christians, we don't walk in just some blind faith. You know, we're not just people who have been duped into some religious scam. No. It's faith that seeks understanding in the realities of life. In other words, faith-seeking understanding is when spies go into the land and come back and tell us, you know, there are giants there, and I don't know how we're going to make it through this. I don't know how you're going to make it through your hospital stay. I don't know how you're going to make it through this decision you have to make. I don't know how you can raise your kids like this. I don't know how you can make it through that job. And faith comes in there and says, what? I don't understand all of this reality, but I do know that through Christ all things are possible. And my faith is going to help me understand this reality. God can work through all things for our good. Romans 8:28. That's what's going on here. Okay, very, very quickly. I've got like 2 minutes. I'll save the talking donkey story for next time we're together. But so they're wandering around in the wilderness. We get to chapter 20. There is a man by the name of Korah who gets some people together and they attempt a coup on Moses, which did not go well. That's I think chapter 16. Chapter 20 is when Moses and Aaron disobeyed. And they are forbidden to enter the promised land. So things are going up and they're going down and up and then down. And then we get to chapter 22. They finally, after about 38 years, make it into Moab, into the territory. The king of Moab is a man by the name of Amalek, I believe. Anyway, Balak. He had a prophet, somebody called a diviner. If you've been in Sunday school, this is one of those people that Saul went to go see right before his death. Witchcraft. This diviner's name was Balaam. The king of Moab goes to Balaam and says, I want you to pronounce a curse on the Hebrew people. We're scared of them. Balaam has an encounter with Yahweh God. Is he going to move forward, stay put, or go back? Well, we'll talk about that next time. But God uses a talking donkey to speak with Balaam. And there's some irony in that because God makes it perfectly clear in that story who the real donkey is. We'll get to that next time, all right? So we've hit the 35,000-foot view of Numbers. We've looked at the first major story. Next time we're together, we'll look at chapter 22. All right, let's have a word of prayer. Lord, thank you for tonight. Thank you for your conviction that comes across to us in the book of Numbers about faith, moving forward with you when you call us to do so, knowing that your power, your presence is evident. So help us, Lord, when we look at the realities of our lives and our day and time. Help us not to see those realities and just say, I just want to go back to where it's comfortable. Help us, Lord, to say, how can my faith in Christ, in you, inform how I'm going to respond to the challenges in front of me today? I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.